Hey everybody, in today's video I'm going to show you how to get the bar on yourself when you're doing exercises like the glute bridge and the hip thrust, because I know that can be really hard for some of you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Melanie from Female Fitness Systems, and on this YouTube channel we talk about fitness, nutrition, and longevity. So if you're new here, welcome, and consider subscribing so you catch future videos from me. So yeah, a lot of you ask me about how to get the bar on yourself when you're doing exercises like the glute bridge. And there seems to be two main issues. First of all, some of you are using smaller weights, and so you can't quite figure out how to wrestle the bar up your legs and get it into position. And then some of you are using heavier weights on the hip thrust and can't quite figure out how to get yourself into position with those really heavy weights on your hips. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do both of those things. Here on YouTube, I think there are a lot of people showing you how to set up the glute bridge and the hip thrust, but nobody's really showing you how to get that bar into place. So I hope you find this helpful. So let's start with the glute bridge, and what I'll do is show you how to get it up your legs when you're not using big enough plates yet so that you can just easily roll it over your legs. Because when you have smaller plates on the bar, it can be really hard to figure out how to get it up into position unless you have somebody who can help lift it on you. So the first thing I do before I set anything up is I fold up a yoga mat, because this is going to cradle the bar when I'm doing the exercise. Now in some commercial gyms you may find a special pad for doing glute bridges and hip thrusts, and you may also see the littler pads that wrap around the bar. Personally, I'm not a fan of those little pads that wrap around the bar. I find they're too thin, and I would prefer to use a yoga mat if it's available. And then of course at home, all I have is a yoga mat, so I get this folded up really well so that it's ready for the exercise before I do anything else. Then I sit on the floor with the mat in my lap and the bar at my feet. And I wiggle my feet under the bar and roll the bar up my legs. Once it gets to a point where it won't roll anymore because it's stuck on my legs, I then lift each side up onto the mat. And another quick tip when it comes to the glute bridge and getting ready for it, if you're somebody who's going really heavy, like I used to do 130 kilo glute bridges, you may want to warm up your wrists, because for women with our little wrists, it can actually be a limiting factor. You can imagine trying to push 130 kilos up your legs, and your wrists are going to take a lot of that load. So before I used to do glute bridges, I actually used to do some things like wrist circles and wrist warm-ups to get ready for the exercise. And then there is also an optimal foot placement when you're doing the glute bridge. If you don't feel your glutes working, you should play with where your feet are and how close they are to your body. If your feet are too far from your body, you're going to feel your hamstrings working more than your glutes. And if they're too close, you're not going to feel like you can get a full bridge up. You're not going to feel like you have the right range of motion, and you're probably going to feel your quads working, and you may even feel the exercise in your knees. And the other thing I often prompt my clients to do is to put their feet slightly wider than shoulder width with their toes slightly pointed out, and this often means that they feel their glutes working better. And then just remember that the sooner you can start using the big plates for doing the glute bridge, the easier it's going to be to get on yourself. And in my experience, most women significantly underestimate the strength that they have, and they hold back with the weight that they use on their glute bridges. Most ladies can start doing something like 40 kilos, which is around 90 pounds, pretty much right away if they're reasonably fit. So once you start doing those bigger weights at the gym, it's going to be a lot easier to just roll the bar up yourself. So let's move on now to the hip thrust, and what I'll do now is show you what to do if you are using those big plates, because With those big plates, it's quite easy to get yourself into a glute bridge, but it can be really hard to figure out how to swing yourself up into the hip thrust, because with the hip thrust, your back is elevated on a bench. So again, get your bar all set up at your feet and wiggle your legs under it. Roll that bar up your hips so that it sits in the pad. And again, you want that pad or yoga mat really in the crease where your legs and your abdomen meet. And then walk your feet back closer to your body. Your back should be positioned on the bench right around where your bra strap sits is a pretty good estimate. And the other thing I should mention is that you are going to need a heavier bench so that it doesn't slip on you, or you need to brace the bench with some weight plates behind it, or put the bench against a wall so that it doesn't slip, especially when you are trying to swing yourself up into position, because that's the point where it probably is going to slip on you. But if you have a heavier bench, you might be perfectly fine. My bench is definitely heavy enough for this exercise, so I don't ever have to brace it. The other thing to look for in your gym is that sometimes there are lower benches and higher benches, and you're going to have to find the one that feels right for you. In my gym, I don't like the lower benches. I find that they almost put my back slightly lower than knee height when I'm in the hip thrust position, and that just doesn't feel right for me when I am doing a hip thrust. So I use the one higher bench at my gym when I am doing them. So definitely play around with the benches that you have and try to find the one that feels the most comfortable. So going back to that hip thrust, how do you actually swing those big heavy plates up? This can be really scary for a lot of women, but I've coached quite a few ladies through this, and once you figure it out, it isn't nearly as hard as you think. So you need to think about using your legs to swing this up rather than your back, if that makes sense. So what you want to do is get those feet in a really nice wide position, your toes probably slightly pointed out, because that's going to help you feel your glutes more when you are doing the hip thrust. And then swing your hips up and use the strength of your legs and your quads and everything to swing that bar into place. The first couple times you do this, the bar is probably going to wobble on you a little bit, but I promise this gets so much easier, and it's really not as hard as you think. So just give it a try, and I'm sure you'll figure it out. So that's how you get into position, and then just like the glute bridge, you want to play with your foot positioning a little bit. You want to make sure that your feet aren't too far from you, because you'll feel your hamstrings working more than your glutes, and you also want to make sure your feet aren't too close to you, because then you'll feel your quads working more than your glutes. So you're basically looking for your shins to be straight up and down, and I often explain it to clients as thinking about creating a 90-degree angle with your shin and your upper leg. And if you have about a 90-degree angle or just slightly more with your toes slightly pointed out, that's probably the best position for the majority of women. So I hope you found this video helpful. I do have some really awesome online training programs if you want some help with all of this. I have home and gym versions available. I have all levels, and I work really closely with all of my clients to match them to the right programs and to monitor their progress. So I'll leave a link to my programs in the description of this video if you want to check them out. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you again next time.
Ready? High five. Good boy. Boy. One more. High five. Good job.